Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, the show where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Really excited for our podcast today. We have some pretty awesome guests on the show to talk about a pretty awesome initiative. So I will quickly introduce them and we will get going. So our first guest today is Greg Klassen. He's a senior director at Skipped Advisory, a former president and CEO of Destination Canada, 25 years in tourism strategy and brand leadership, really a legend, I think, in the tourism industry. So honestly, such an honor for me, Greg, to have you on the show. Pretty awesome. So thank you. And we also have Stavros Karlos, who's the director of research policy and government affairs at the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta. Also a former Banff counselor, municipal counselor, and founder of the Banff Hospitality Collective. So thank you both for joining me today. And the reason we're talking today is actually because I was at the Tourism Association of Alberta conference a little while ago, not too long ago. And Greg, you were actually on the stage talking about a pretty cool initiative that you guys put together. And really the initiative's name is Kate. And I won't get too much into the press release and everything you guys kind of talked about, but just at a high level, really Kate is an AI HR advisor really tailored specifically for Alberta's tourism sector. It's a free tool. It's really vetted. I'll talk about, Greg, your presentation and what really stood out to me in a bit. But why don't we start off with, just sort of maybe in your own words, kind of where kind of Kate came from and why you thought that this was sort of an important direction to go in terms of building a tool for the tourism industry.
Yeah, why'd you kick it off, Stavros, and I'll follow up.
Yeah. So, Peter, this is a really interesting piece of it because the tool was actually the output and it was never intended as part of the project from the inception. Thankfully, technology caught up to us and provided a solution for this project. So this was a labor project that was funded in part by the province of Alberta and the government of Alberta. Our original hypothesis on this was really around training and compensation and ensuring that the SMEs, which are primarily the vast majority of businesses in the tourism sector, had the tools and research and, of course, ability to implement HR and HR practices within their own organization. But the real synthesis of the project was going back to compensation culture in tourism. And Peter, as a tourism person, that tourism careers aren't necessarily considered as the most long-term career path trajectory for folks in the economy. And as those of us who work in the tourism industry know very well, that's not necessarily true, and that there's a lot of high-value positions. Additionally, we also know that those employers who are operating at the top of, let's call it the HR heap, who've implemented policies, procedures, modern HR practices, they outperform other tourism providers. And so really the equation is this: service plus well-trained employees equals more profits for businesses. That was the original hypothesis. Where we ended up going, and I'll let Greg take over here and just maybe add a little bit of context to that and help build that out. We ended up engaging in a research project at the beginning of this, and I'll let Greg maybe give a little bit of an overview on what that looked like and how we ended up coming out to Kate at the very end of it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Stavros. Yeah, I'm just going to take a step backwards. Peter, I think you and your listeners know this very well, but, I'm making up stats here, but in the high 80s, percentage-wise, the tourism industry is made up of small and medium-sized businesses. And what do small and medium-sized businesses have time for? Not HR, not looking at the massive amount of labor challenges that they face, from recruiting to retention to paying them to understanding the rules and regulations that garner our labor use. All of those things get in the way of small businesses being able to actually deliver what they have passion to deliver. That small business that is, running a small boutique hotel, or whether you're that small business, you're a river guide, or you're looking as a canoe operator, the impact that your people have on the satisfaction of that experience is massive. Your time to develop those employees is very, very low. So we wanted to bridge that gap between those two big ideas. We know that every single day in Alberta, the tourism industry is leaving money on the table. They could open longer. They could open longer in a season. They could sell more. A restaurant might be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but only able to open for dinner because they have gaps between the labor they need and the labor they want in order to stay open. That takes all of the operation, and that minimizes the amount of impact that your investment into a restaurant might have or investment into that hotel might have. We see floors being shuttered right now. The 17th, the 21st floor in a major hotel is simply unable to open because there's nobody there to make the beds. It's not a demand problem. It used to be.
Yeah.
It's a supply problem. And so we wanted to look at a tool that said, how can we make this thing work better? And that was where Kate came from.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And you know what I really liked about the one part of your presentation? I liked your whole presentation, Greg, but the one part that really kind of stood out to me interestingly, and I don't know if it stood out to others, but you had a slide on there where you kind of talked about how kind of how Kate came together and some of the information that you fed into Kate and a lot of, the Alberta Employment Standard stuff. And there was a lot of different reports created by different associations and different groups. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in that slide, you had different documents that you guys fed into sort of the back end of Kate, and you had a little bracket in there, and was that bracket with some numbers in it? Was that the amount of times that thing was downloaded or used, or like can you give me some insights as to what that? Do you remember what that was? I think you said something like, yeah, it was sort of the amount of use that this thing had. I think, but anyways,
Yeah,
does that
I
make
mean,
sense to
I'm
you?
trying to recall where I had that, I mean, I can tell you that there are at least 80 sources of information that makes up this small language model that supports Kate. All of those are hyper focused on Alberta policy, Alberta labor policies, looking at the specific to tourism, specific to small business, specific to adventure-based businesses. Sometimes they're culinary-based businesses, specific to hotels. There are over 80 well-meaning organizations across Alberta and across Canada that are developing tools for small and medium-sized businesses that in, the old days, meaning 2 weeks ago, forced these small and medium-sized businesses to go through each one of those modules, to watch hundreds of hours of video, to go through hundreds, if not thousands of pages of documents, policy, support to help them. Maybe, just maybe, they can find that nugget and answer their question that they can now, with a few keystrokes, using the miracle of AI, help them answer those questions. So this is just a monumental leap forward in terms of support and help for those businesses with a very trusted sourced information to make sure that you are making the right decisions, and getting the right HR assistant with that agentic part of AI to
Yeah.
support you going forward.
And that's exactly what I was getting at, Greg, in terms of your presentation, because what really stood out to me is like, yeah, to your point, there's all these well-meaning organizations that created all this amazing content, but that still takes a lot of work to go through all that. And so what you've done is really packaged it into a and I like the word small language model as well. You've made it useful, right? And to me, that is such a brilliant use case. I think that could be a model that actually is a really easily sort of repeatable model of how do we make use of all of this amazing stuff that exists out there and put it to work in a really meaningful way for small businesses, right? And I think that's what you guys kind of unlocked with Kate. So really well done there.
So Peter,
Stavros,
Yeah.
you're looking to talk,
yeah,
Stavros. You should talk.
I'm excited because you hit the nail on the head there. So of course, within the HR world, one of our biggest concerns was the validity of the information that was being provided. We don't want our AI hallucinating on HR items. We all know what happens when humans hallucinate in the HR department, and it doesn't lead to great outcomes. So the wonderful thing about even AI, and even if you think about the structure of language models, is legislation actually works really well in that area. And so the scaffolding from the legislation all the way up is really, really great because it ties it right back to the legislation in every case. So we have those 80 sources plus of information that's been fed into the system. And this was the other piece, Peter, when we were going through the information gathering section, and as we moved through our project, one of our project outputs was to create a training program for tourism employers across the Greg's rolling. Yeah, Greg's rolling his eyes because I did the same thing. That's always where we naturally go to, which is people need more training. And they don't need more training. They need access to information. And the reality is our partners over at HR Tourism Canada, our partners at the Alberta Hotel and Lodging Association, as well as many others, have created reams of incredible training materials for both professionals, non-professionals, all up and down the industry. But accessing that from what Greg just described is not a single day. Like, that's multiple days of understanding that ecosystem. This shortcuts that entire process, and it continues to allow for that deeper learning should people wanted to, because one of the important principles was that we link back to the source. This is and needs to be trusted sources of information. My personal opinion is that if models like these are to work, you need to build up that level of trust and that level of confidence in the model to generate what you're looking for fairly quickly and with a high level of validity.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'll challenge just a little bit of what you said, or I'll nuance a little bit of what you said, because I think people need training. But really what they need training in now is, where are all these tools and how do I put them to work, right? And so for me, I do a lot of AI training and a lot of hands-on AI training. And now I've started to incorporate, for example, Destination Canada came out with Aurora in terms of how you can talk to your customer and sort of understand from a marketing insights perspective. And now, to me, for Alberta, people that I would train, this would be part of my curriculum as
Right.
well. It's like, here's your HR advisor purpose built for you. Here's your, persona tool purpose built for you in tourism. So all these tools coming together now, it's like, wow, what a tool stack, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, it's about how do we help people, first of all, get access to or understand how to access these tools, and then how do we teach them how to leverage them to their maximum advantage, and supercharge these businesses. You know what I mean? And so I think that's kind
Yeah.
of my only caveat on the trading side. Greg,
Your
yeah.
last
Yeah,
point there,
Peter.
Peter, is important. How
Sorry,
to use
Peter.
the tools.
Peter, I think we need you to help train them. I think that's a really critical component to all of this, because it's not always technology is not always intuitive. New
Yeah.
technology is certainly not intuitive. AI is certainly not intuitive, especially as it continues to evolve and develop and somewhat change. So I think we definitely need you as that trainer using those tools and resources. I just want to go back to one thing that you said that I loved, was the word repeatable model. This is a repeatable model. We have no more than just HR challenges in the business of tourism. One of them is attracting entrepreneurs to our industry and business. One of them is attracting investors to our industry and business. There are, again, well-meaning economic development teams and Invest in Canada and Invest in Alberta teams that sometimes dabble in tourism. Mostly they look at other industries like tech and life sciences and things like that. But they've got their training videos and they've got their how-to and what to recognize and what to invest. And there's another 1,000 pages of documents that you can go through. But we are desperate for destination development. You are desperate in Alberta for destination development. You've just created the most awesome thing in Alberta, which is the all seasons resorts policy that helps you build out better and more tourism in those resorts, in direct competition with British Columbia, that is really eating your resort lunch right now. Get investors for those. And how about using an ask, maybe it's not Kate, maybe it's Bob, and ask Bob how to find investors and how to give investors what they need, the tools and the packages of what they need, zoning bylaws, policy support, where to find financing and banking and all of those other things, interest in tourism, and then allowing these potential investors to choose Castle in Alberta, because that is the best place for them to risk their capital. So I absolutely love that idea of repeatable model. And maybe Taya can look at other industries that support the growth of tourism in Alberta.
I love that idea, Greg. That's fantastic. And again, to your point, a lot of well-meaning organizations have done a lot of work over the years, and this is just about putting it all together, packaging it up, making it useful, right? And I think there's so much value in doing that. So yeah, I think you're really onto something. We can have a separate conversation, but I'm building some software myself that might be valuable in this whole conversation, but that's a conversation for another day. I want to switch gears a little bit and just get a little bit more practical here. And maybe what we could do is talk a little bit about, who is really Kate for, specifically. How would that person actually use it on a day-to-day kind of basis? Can we walk through maybe an example of, I don't know, a hotel owner or a tourism operator or something like that, and how would they on a practical level use this tool? I don't know if that's a Stavros question or if that's a Greg question. I'll let you guys
It
It's
decide.
could be a
Stavros'
both.
turn to talk.
Yeah, thanks. So number one, just on all season resorts, I have to put in the plug because we just don't get to say it very often, which is, boy, Alberta has the best skiing in North America right now. We've got so much snow here and it's awesome. We don't even know what to do with ourselves because we've gotten too many back-to-back POW days. I'm 5 out of 7 right now. So the all-season resort space is fantastic, but that's not relevant. Sorry,
It
semi-relevant to this
is.
discussion.
Very relevant, but yes.
Very pertinent. So primarily, again, that target is that SME, but the use case on it is effectively, so I'm X, Y, and Z operator operating a rafting company. I have 2 employees and I got questioned on my overtime policy. This is an easy way to start that conversation rather than the opposite, which is how we all currently go fishing for information, which was that Google fishing trip. And then that takes you down basically into a learning and education process, which goes from a 5-minute answer into a 2-hour process. That's use case number 1. Use case number 2 is talking about setting up HR systems within your company without dedicated HR support within the organization. So things like policies, procedures, manuals, pieces like that are, again, time consuming, but AI is uniquely able to assist in the production of both those documents and those processes and procedures within the organizations.
Can I
The
just ask
last
a
one is
question and pause you on that before we move on? So you're talking about sort of standard operating procedures? Is that sort of like you can actually build all your
SOPs.
HR
Yeah.
SOPs? This is like my favorite word of 2025 is SOPs because I just want to make a plug that if we're thinking about AI systems for the future, we actually have to document our processes and we actually have to document our context and we actually have to do a lot of unsexy work in our businesses to prepare ourselves for the future. And that's just context. What you're saying, this makes it really easy to get that piece of work done, which is amazing because that is like the pain every small business needs to. I keep telling everybody, business consultants have been saying this for 30 years, and now it really matters. Now you really got to do it, otherwise you're going to get left
Yes.
behind when the agentic AI starts to come in. And you don't have the systems in place. Sorry, I just wanted to kind
No,
of make that
Peter,
point, but continue on.
and fundamentally, we want to see this as a competitive advantage for our business owners in this province. And of course, throughout Canada, we want more is better. Rising tide lifts all boats, of course. But we want it to be a competitive advantage. Plus, and I'm going to say, this is also a call to action, which is all 3 of us have been to destinations across the world and this continent where you go into a business and you're like, please, for the love of all that is good on this beautiful earth, take my money, give me an ability to give you, I want to pay for awesome services. This is part of that. Having companies with well-supported employees that can spend most of their time working on product and development and servicing the customer benefits us all. That is the foundational value add of our business. If we do not do a better job of that in this existing environment where you have machines taking over certain areas, we need to utilize this in order to double down on the pieces that we know people are valuing, which is the face-to-face interaction, the real things, the real activities, the touch points.
I just need to add to that because Stavros is so importantly right. Most of these positions in hospitality and tourism are client facing, and that means your brand manifests through that person at that desk or that server or that person, that taxi driver or anybody who is front facing. And I just learned this new word about the Gen Z stare, the Gen Z stare. And that is this sort of sense of, well, I hate to use that word, but hopelessness in terms of younger people are just doing these service jobs without a lot of passion inside of them. And they're, I'll serve you my coffee, but I'm not going to look you in the eye. I'm not going to give you any added service. I'm just going to, it's a transaction between me and you. And hospitality, especially those that really manifest your brand, need to be more than just a transaction. They need to be an interaction, they need to be an engagement with your customer. That is going to make you more money. That is going to make them, that should make them more money. That should be an opportunity for us to do that. And how do we do that? And that is through these tools that we can have, engaging people better, engaging your staff members better, going beyond the Gen Z stare into support. I know, Stavros, you're laughing but I think that's number one. And number two is you asked another use case, and the other one is you're looking to hire somebody new. You've got 6 key points that person needs to be able to deliver on. We need to find somebody with these skills, including this specialized certification. Kate, write me a job description. Seconds, the job description comes up. Yes, you're going to tweak it a little bit. You're going to spend about 7 or 8 minutes tweaking it. Okay, now, so you've got your job description. You're posting it on LinkedIn or somewhere else. Okay, Kate, I'm interviewing 4 candidates. Create me a list of questions that I'm going to ask them. I want 5 questions that reflect this job description so we can evaluate their skills. Thank you for those 5 questions. We've got 5 good questions. Now give me a scoring rubric on those. So what is a 1 out of 5? What is a 5 out of 5? What kind of enthusiasm in the answer am I going to get? All of that will take about maybe 7 or 8 or 9 minutes. That used to take a day. That used to take somebody away from doing their day job, whether they're a frontline chef or managing a restaurant or managing their canoe operation and taking out guests. That is now taking about 10, maybe 20 minutes tops in order to get exactly the right candidates. That's what Kate can do for a small and medium-sized business.
That's a great example. And the other thing, Greg, I'll just add to that is that, I always talk about the zone of genius. I think if everybody spent all of their time in their zone of genius, we would have an amazing, productive workforce, and just people would be so fulfilled. And what I've learned about tourism over the years is nobody goes into tourism to work on HR policies or job descriptions, or people go into tourism because they love hospitality, they love people, they love providing experiences, they love wowing people, right? And so to me, Kate, Aurora, even just general AI tools, the promise for tourism is amazing, because if these tools can really be put to work in an efficient and effective way, people can go back into actually their passion that you talked about, and actually go out and provide great hospitality tourism experiences. And we can really actually redesign tourism around the human experience, which I think is a really exciting opportunity for us. And so that's kind of, for me, tools like this are the magic that's going to unlock all of that.
Can you say that again, Peter? Redesign the tourism experience? Wait, what'd you just say?
Redesign tourism around the human experience.
Wow, that's another nugget. I'm stealing that one.
Go for it. Yeah.
Peters, throughout all of this, and we've touched on it a couple of times, and I'm actually curious about what your thoughts on it is. It is work to actually use AI in a way that's meaningful, and I've even witnessed how the rest of my family uses AI, and my prompts are a lot different than theirs and the way that I built things in. And that was one of so we did pilot. This was the fun part. We actually did get to pilot the AI, and we had feedback from folks all the way from Fairmont down to Marriott's and small operators as well. And what I found interesting was our HR professionals at that top level. So our target here isn't the Fairmont or Accors of the world. They have systems and policies and built up, and I think generally you can look at what those organizations are doing, and you can validate a human-centric approach to lots of things. But it was really, this is the question I have. How best do we get people asking the right questions? Because I can give you all of the knowledge of the world, and you can ask a lot of bad questions, and it gets you nowhere. Therefore, the tool is not useful. So this is something that we've been exploring, and of course you see it with prompts, but what are your thoughts on this, Peter? And I know you touched on it, so you must have
so
some thinking.
I approached that question actually. So I have a program that I roll out to people. It's very hands-on, one-on-one training. I call it AI Intuition Sprint. And so really, for me, about using AI as a leader and also as a frontline person is actually about building intuition. And that is exactly what you're talking about there. It's not about it's about sort of understanding what AI is good at, understanding how to ask the question, understanding how to be like, so for me, the process goes like this. You teach a little bit of foundational information training. Here's the tools, here's the different components of the tools. And then you teach people about context, because context is really important. And then you sort of combine context with the tools, and amazing things happen. And then what happens when you do that is that sparks that AI intuition. And then that AI intuition leads to curiosity, and that curiosity leads to experimentation. And then, you come back a little bit later, and then you kind of, the way I do my training is I go through that process, and then I'll come back, and then we'll have another workshop, and we kind of talk about what you've learned and what you've experimented with and whatever. And then we sort of package it together for them. And then that sort of, then they're off and running. Cause again, it's that intuition that needs to be there. It's not about necessarily a strict framework for prompting or like, yeah, that stuff is helpful, but it's actually about that intuition. And so, I'll give you an example of my favorite use case. I actually did this yesterday with, this is just a great thing. I use Claude AI a lot. And so yesterday I basically said to Claude, hey, go through every chat we've had over the last 3 months, go through every document we've created, go through my drive, go through my calendar, go through everything I've done in the last 3 months, and create basically a document that's the essence of what Peter's kind of like where his brain's at today. And it created that, and then this is all just me in voice mode, a conversation back and forth, and I tuned it up and basically turned that into my 2026 strategy. I said it seems like I'm doing a lot of things, maybe it's too much, and it was like, yeah, too much. And it actually helped me kind of narrow down. The reason I use that example is because that's not a very strict prompt framework. That's me having a really strategic conversation with my AI assistant. That's me. I've learned intuitively the abilities of these tools to be able to do that. And by the way, then I turned it into a branded PowerPoint deck because I have a project that allows me to do that. You know what I mean? And like when people see what can be done, when you talk about examples like this, all of a sudden it's like, boom, their eyes open up and it's like, wow, what is possible here? And those wow moments are what we need to teach people, because those wow moments are what are going to inspire people to sort of go beyond and start thinking about AI from an investment perspective of my investment of my time, education, change management, and all things that need to happen systematically to actually make AI adoption work.
Curiosity is the one of the you mentioned curiosity, and because I'm by nature a curious person, I like pulling threads all over the place, and just I think of how I approached AI, and it was from a curious perspective, like, what does this thing know?
Yeah.
What do we do? And that's actually when you talk about intuition, and it just really clicked with me how I've been approaching AI, and maybe not all because I know certainly lots of people are less curious than I am, and probably that's how they use AI as well. So yeah.
It is. And so I'm always shocked when I do AI training with people. It's like, I use ChatGPT every day. And then you go into the training and it's like, I've never pressed any button other than just put in a query into the search bar. I didn't realize I could do deep research. I didn't realize I can create projects. I didn't realize, you know what I mean? So it's like, then you just show them and they're like, oh my God. And I just say, go click buttons. You can't break the thing. You know what I mean? And so again, what's cool about AI is it's so intuitive. Like it is so intuitive once somebody just sort of unlocks just a little bit for you. And then that's really sparks that curiosity, right? So to me, that's the key. And then once you get people curious, then it's really the sky's the limit in my opinion. My next question here is around obviously the Alberta government's put out a tourism strategy. They're kind of talking about some other things. And so I'm assuming that this is, the putting Kate together is part of that overall kind of strategy, tourism strategy for the province. Can you kind of help me understand how that sort of fits into the bigger picture of where the province is going?
Yep, I can absolutely help with that. So, TAIA is not the government of Alberta. We're on the industry side of things. As part of the higher ground strategy, which is the provincial tourism growth strategy, industry was extensively consulted as part of that. And one of the pillars in that strategy, amongst other things like air product development, is people and careers. And we've taken up the mantle on the people and careers piece, trying to move the industry forward in an intentional way that enable service providers to do what they do best, which is provide excellent services. So the people and careers part of the tourism strategy recognizes that both the growing tourism industry and to reach the government's projected goal of a $25 billion tourism industry by the year 2035 will require about another 100,000 employees in the tourism workforce in Alberta. So part of this was what's our goal as an industry? And we are one of the first jurisdictions in Canada to have this provincially endorsed revenue target, which is tourism folks. We know why we've picked a revenue target rather than a people target. And so after the strategy came out, we believe that in order for any strategy, whether that's produced by the government or by industry to work, that it needs all participants rowing in the same direction. And we have folks like the Indigenous Tourism Association of Alberta, who've been excellent at developing new products across Alberta in new communities. And so the plan itself is dependent on both accentuating our existing crown jewels in the crown of Alberta, but also allowing for new destinations to enter that tourism space. And I am so excited that we have a piece like Cape, because when I go to rural tourism communities that or new communities that are entering the tourism economy. We're talking to operators who don't have a ton of exposure to export markets. They have a ton of exposure to local and regional markets, absolutely. But as we know, there's a product differentiation and a product build out that'll happen throughout this. So for me, this is setting up that next level of growth in Alberta. So primarily our growth up until this point, in my personal opinion, others will disagree, was certainly in the post-pandemic world, mostly driven by Alberta's really quick rebound on air access. Alberta is a fly-to destination. We need air, and we rebounded quickly because we were able to regain that air access. Now, in over the last couple of years, we've started seeing the product development side of things pick up. Greg talked about the investor services. Alberta is actively seeking investors in terms of both in destination and new destination through all season resorts investments.
Awesome. I'll just ask a couple quick questions. There's gonna be a little bit lightning round just to sort of close us off now. So I'm gonna ask each of you to answer. Maybe Greg, you can start, and then I'll give you a second, Stavros, to think about it. So I'll put Greg on the spot. So Kate feature, like one Kate feature or one use case or one thing that an operator should do like today using Kate. What would it be if you had to advise?
I would say, every day there's going to be an HR issue. Something's happening. Stavros mentioned overtime policy. Is it a legally mandated thing to do, or is it just a nice thing to do for your employees? You can very quickly find out the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that question. Kate does. And Kate can answer that very quickly. And then you can, with confidence, tell your employee that you're not legally mandated to, but you're going to do it anyway, or you're going to say, no, we're not going to do it. I think that that's a really daily use of this. As things come up on a daily basis, which they do, this will answer those questions.
Stavros, how about you?
Yep. I'm curious in how Kate would be at setting up incremental training for my employees while they're on the job and describing to me how that might look relative to different careers. So again, I love to focus on this training piece because a well-trained employee is really, really good at helping me enjoy myself, which in our industry means emptying my pockets. I want to empty my pockets. We want our visitors to empty my pockets. Why haven't you trained your employee to take my money? So what I'm curious about is we talked about time compression and the challenges of that, but as a hospitality operator, I know nobody is running full out all throughout the day, and there's opportunities for productivity
Sure.
improvements within that space. I take offense with the notion that our industry is a low productivity industry and there's no opportunities for advancement. I believe that we are on the cusp. And
Great.
even in the post-pandemic world, you can see tourism and hospitality did make some productivity gains. This is a real opportunity. This is how you get productivity gains. How can you use the technology to enable your business to value add to through your HR practices to your employee base, which makes them more money, you more money, and your guests are 10 times as happier banging in on the repeat visitation.
Love that. I'm going to add one more. It's not exactly a Kate use case per se, but it's a best practice around to tayaalberta.com/ask-Kate, and then save that to your browser, put it on your desktop, make it as accessible as possible. This is something I also teach people, remove the Google search bar from your your first window you see, start adding these different tools and start building habits around going to these tools and using these tools. Greg, you're 100% correct where it's like use this tool every day. That is actually how you're going to get the value of the tool and make it a habit. So one of the things we need to be thinking about right now is being deliberate about changing our habits. Really easy to go to Google and spend half a day trying to find an answer when you got Kate right there on the ready, can give you the answer you need, right? So let's just start thinking about habit change and sort of being deliberate about that.
And Peter, a habit change of not, and now we're getting into a new habit of going to Claude or going to ChatGPT for our answers. Now we're going to ask people to say, those are good for general questions, but you've got a small language model like Ask Kate and others that will help you be very specific so that you have more confidence in the responses you're getting.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, Greg, also, again, there's a bit of unfortunately, we're in this world, unfortunately, where probably we need to think about learning how to use multiple tools for multiple purposes. And that is, again, another habit, another concept for us to get around. It's not just a ChatGPT, my free version, and it's AI. That's not. unfortunately, we're in this, fortunately or unfortunately, it just, the tool stack's changing, right? So again, it's about getting some habits, creating some systems. And then, one of the things you can do, for example, is take all of the information you're getting out of Kate, take all those standard operating procedures you're getting out of Kate, and then go to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever your tool of choice is, and start building that in as context and background information to really build your general purpose tool into a very specific, company specific tool that can really help you out, right? So
That's really
we're
important.
getting a little down the rabbit hole in terms of how to use AI effectively, but this is how people need to start thinking overall. My next question here, rapid fire, is one metric you'll watch to prove the impact of Kate. So is there any sort of kind of standout metrics you guys are looking at? Is there anything from your end that you would say, yeah, this is a success because? It'd be great to understand that.
Yeah, Peter, and this is actually an important one. And what I would like to get is, rather than quantitative, I want to get qualitative responses back. I found when we did the pilot program, the most insightful conversation that I had was with my friend Jennifer Melanson from the Fairmont Banff Springs. And we sat down and she told me, and it was a wonderful conversation about the use case on this, because she actually got her introduction to AI through Kate and through that process of development. Yeah, I know. It's really interesting, Greg. And so hearing her perspective on thinking about how the how the AI itself was being built and constructed, and what really, really validated it for me was when I met with her a few weeks back, she said, while for a company like Accor, Kate may not make sense, we've started rolling out internal systems now, and the process of Kate is validated by my use of it, and it's now helping me understand that AI integration in other parts of the organization as well. We host our Tourism Advocacy Summit in February. We will be doing some qualitative outreach at that point, as well as quantitative outreach at that point, and we will be serving the general public. I don't have a measurement of success, because our previous measurement of success within this project and the study was related to the training program that we were going to execute. And Greg, and he's smiling because I don't know how many times I said it at the beginning of the project. I'm like, we don't want to do this. It exists. Why would we do this again? So good point. And that's TBD, but mostly qualitative over quantitative at this point right now, because I still feel like we have some runway to go in terms of the development and use of this product.
I'm gonna say I still like counts and stuff, and so I'd like to count unique users of Kate, and I would love to count how long they spend with the tool. We're already starting to count that. Luckily with digital we can count that stuff. But I think one of the critical components to this is communication, right? It's available. How we can't yell it from the rooftops loud enough to remind everybody in our industry of thousands and thousands and thousands of SMEs, many of whom can't attend TIA conferences or Travel Alberta conferences to get this understanding. Is we just can't communicate this enough. So we got to get that word out so that people change their habits and start to use this thing. And that will be a good indicator for me that it is working, because people are actually getting good outcomes from this.
Love that. Yeah. No, and for sure, I'm obviously, this podcast is part of trying to help
Thank you.
make that happen. But to me, also, for me, I'll say incorporating some of this into some of the training I do, so that again, we want to think about our different tools as different sort of helpers, right? And so Kate is our HR helper. Rora, maybe from Destination Canada, is our our target audience development kind of a helper, right? Maybe Claude or ChatGPT is your general purpose helper, and you can build special helpers in there, right? So to me, it's I would love to be in a place 12 months from now where people are talking about Kate, their HR assistant, and you know what I mean? And we start to personify them a little bit, and that becomes kind of the vernacular that's used in the industry. I think that would be a cool, very hard to measure sort of metric, but I think for me, gut check would be a pretty cool metric. So excellent. Well, I want to thank you both for your time. I think this is a fantastic conversation. I feel like we could probably geek out on all things tourism and AI for hours. And maybe if we have another opportunity one day, we can do that. But thank you for your time. Before we let you go, maybe if you could just pass off any information in terms of, for example, how people can access Kate, how they can get access to you, or sort of get more information if they're looking for that.
Yep. Absolutely. So you did mention the Ask Kate URL earlier. It's www.tialberta.ca/ask-Kate. And that is also available from our website.
I'm going to give you a cheekier and worse answer. Go to Google and Google Ask
Kate.
Kate. It's actually there.
I know.
Google isn't dead yet.
It's not dead yet. It's not dead yet. Yeah, it's true. Awesome. Great.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
bet.
Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for the podcast. Great
You betcha.
information today. Take care.